Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're chatting with Jordan Plosky, co-founder of Zoop Games. His newest campaign for the deck-building game Care Bears Unlock the Magic is currently on Kickstarter. Jordan, welcome to the binge. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good, man, but I don't know if I can match that energy. That's amazing.
Well, as I was saying just before we went on air, and we're going to get into Care Bears in a bit, but I
For
honed in
sure.
on this thing like a missile, right? Like this goes right back to when I was a kid, and just the nostalgia that was just flowing through me while I was on your campaign page. It just brought back the feels, man, and we're going to get into it in this episode. I'm so excited. But first, for those who don't know you, this is the first we're meeting, actually. We just literally said hello 30 seconds ago. Zoop Games, like, how did it start? Like, have you been a gamer your whole life, or kind of what's your origin story?
Uh, so the short answer is no. I haven't been a gamer my whole life. I'm more of the family games like Monopoly and
Yeah.
Uno, and about as deep as I got into games before we kind of launched Zoop Games, and we'll get into all that as well, is Ticket to Ride. That's about as like
All
hardcore as
right.
I get, which I know is not very deep into things. That being said, uh, Zoop started in 2020, actually. It was a pandemic baby. And
Mm,
our first focus was comic books and graphic novels. That's kind of like my deep passion. I'm that nerd, you know.
that's cool.
Um, but Zoop is actually we're still currently a live platform. We do crowdfunding as well, so we're a competitor to Kickstarter, and
Mm.
our big differentiator is that we're full service. So we help comic book creators and graphic novel creators handle campaign management and marketing and printing and fulfillment and finding vendors for pins and stickers and art prints and things like that. Because just like in the world of game development and publishing, it takes more than one person to create the content and then market it and be your finance person. You've run
Yeah.
campaigns, I'm assuming, so
Yeah.
all the different hats that you need to wear. So we're sort of like a built-in team for people in the comic and graphic novel space over on Zoop.
So,
What
sorry, so that part of the business started during COVID?
That started during COVID. It's still live today. We have live campaigns that are currently running.
And then
We've
how'd
worked
you
with all.
start that? Like, what led to starting that? Like,
Sure. So it's actually my second startup. I had another startup from 2014 to 2018 that we wound up selling. That was called Comic Blitz. That was essentially subscription-based digital comic books, so like Netflix, but for comics. And we wound up selling that company to a video distribution company, with streaming service like, um, video on demand and,
hmm?
and subscription-based videos and everything like that. And they sort of looped the digital comics into their digital streaming content. So I wound up going to work for that company who bought us um, in a really nice way. It was not a culture fit. So I wound up finding like a day job. During that day job, COVID hit and everybody's stuck at home. Hours are cut. Like I was fortunate I got to keep my job, but like, hey, everything got slashed so that the company could survive, and I get that. I was going crazy. I think we all kind of were, and
Oh
I
yeah.
needed I needed I got together with my now co-founder because he was going to start consulting for people on their Kickstarters at the time. And we sort of went down a rabbit hole of like, hey, crowdfunding is amazing, but what if you could offer all these other things that you like kind of currently can't over on Kickstarter? So that was sort of the genesis of Zoop. And because of my relationships and my partner's relationships in the comic book industry, it was a really easy place to like target all those creators that we had already had relationships with. So
Mm.
we've run hundreds of campaigns. We've been hands-on and fulfilled, hundreds of campaigns. So even though we might not have a lot of Kickstarters under our belt, like when you go to our creator account, we know what we're doing when it comes to crowdfunding, fulfillment, and production and everything like that.
It's interesting when you say cultural fit. That is a pretty common thread when companies acquire other companies.
Oh,
where
that cultural fit, yeah.
yeah, like where, unfortunately, it's usually a larger company will come in and swallow a smaller company, and you often see the OG team kind of exiting stage left, right? Because they're just like, this doesn't fit with that whole kind of bootstrappy
It,
founder culture that we had going in. Now we're just part of like a big corporate machine, and I don't like it.
it is two different working styles, if you will.
Yeah,
You know, I stayed long enough really to integrate everything into their, new back end platform and everything like that. But realistically, like you said, it's
yeah,
I don't want to, get too much into it, but it just wasn't the best place that I wanted to spend my time.
yeah, and
So
that's kind of normal. The other question I was going to ask is like in cases like that, I imagine there'd be some kind of time-based non-compete that would be in place to say, okay, hey, like you can't come into
sure.
the comic book industry and kind of compete against us. So given that there's some slight adjacencies here, obviously this is different. It's a crowdfunding platform, but it's still kind of in that industry. Was there any navigation you had to do that there at all, or was it pretty clean?
No, I don't really remember the details of the non-compete, but I think the time period had already elapsed,
Yeah,
first of all, but second of all, I wasn't directly competing.
yeah,
I wasn't distributing digitally. I wasn't in that category, you
yeah.
know? So as far as like starting another company, sure, I was absolutely allowed to do that. Um, and yeah, there's no worries on anything like that.
I think the obvious question is probably why launch on Kickstarter if you have your own platform?
Yeah, and that's a great question. One of the reasons is this is the gaming category. We don't have a gaming audience. My ego aside, like I understand, how this works. We actually tried our first game on Zoop, and it
Mm,
did modestly well, but we wanted it to do better. And this is not an ad for Kickstarter by any means, but we're using a lot of the tools that only integrate with Kickstarter that, we had conversations and we tried to get some tools integrated into our back end and we weren't quite, at a place where it made sense.
yeah,
So like a launch boom, we're using for the pre-launch marketing. We're using Backer Kit for pledge management and everything like that. We're using GelOp for marketing throughout the campaign. Now, these are three they're incredible tools. And if we could use them over at Zoop, then we may have just stuck over at Zoop. But we we ran a first campaign on Kickstarter using all those tools, and we
mm,
did $138,000.
yeah,
And we're like, okay, that beat the 20 something thousand dollars that we did on our own platform.
yeah.
And I think it's like it's pretty safe to say, this is sort of where the games audience is. All these tools really helped boost, what we're capable of doing.
Yeah.
So we still have our thing going on over on Zoop, but hey, egos aside, let's go and do as big as we can.
Well, when you think about it, like, and I think the last stat I heard was is like a third, right? Like a third of Kickstarter's traffic is just board games, right?
Uh, you might know better than me, but I mean, clearly it's like the top one or two categories. It's
Yeah,
like,
it's huge. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
tech
a
and design.
meaningful chunk of their business, and
Absolutely.
so you do get the organic growth with the Kickstarter platform as well, right? People who come in and find your game, and it's serving your game up to people who may have not been exposed to it. Um, and so I can see why you would, right? Like it just makes sense. It's the reason why some people will look at their game and say, okay, do I launch it over here on GameFound, or do I launch it on Backer Kits, crowdfunder, or do I
Yeah.
launch it on Kickstarter? Well, the answer is it depends on what kind of game you're launching, right? And
And
if that game is a better fit with the Kickstarter audience, then you're going to be best served to launch it there because you're going to get a lot more organic growth, right?
So our first game that we launched on Kickstarter was another licensed property. There's a comic book publishing line called Zenoscope Comics.
Hmm.
Um, and they do what I will kindly refer to as cheesecake versions of grim fairy tales. So beautiful women, fighting monsters and things like that. You got your Dorothy from Wizard of Oz, Little Red Riding Hood, and Alice in Wonderland, things like that.
Yeah.
Um, but Zenoscope Comics has done multiple crowdfunding campaigns over on Kickstarter. They have a built-in audience over there, and it was
Yeah.
a really easy fit for us to just say, well, we could tap into that audience where these guys are currently like they crush their campaigns, several six-figure campaigns, in the comics category for them. So it's like, all right, We know that there's an audience. They know how to go direct to their consumers. So it made making that switch over to Kickstarter easier for us because we felt not only is there the overall Kickstarter ecosystem and that audience, but we have this very specific, tiny niche audience that is backing like everything this company does. So that was our first experience on Kickstarter. Um, I will say, because I know we were going to talk licensing, that's our second licensed game. The first one we did over on Zoop.
Yeah.
And um, interestingly enough, we do have plans to do like a V2 over on Kickstarter and see if all those tools, that are available, like I mentioned on Kickstarter, will actually help us boost, the new version of that game.
Yeah, sometimes relaunching on these platforms can give you a pretty large boost. What was the decision to get into board games specifically instead of just sticking
Oh,
with the comics? What drove that?
yeah, great question. I did want to touch that. So we're a small team, but one of our team members actually is a game designer. And
Mm,
when you combine his experience in actually designing games with the fact that we have all of these manufacturing partners and fulfillment, and we know how to crowdfund, like all under one roof, it was kind of like a no-brainer to go that route,
yeah, that's cool.
versus the comics route. Because as much as I love comics, the margins are paper thin.
Yeah,
There's no money to be made. And like this is a business, right?
yep,
This we had spoke a little bit, but just before we started recording, about like what's the day job? This is the day job,
yeah,
so we have to be pretty particular about which properties we're working on. As much as we might love something, we really have to run the numbers and see, is this going to be something that sustains us for the next, until the next campaign, until the next campaign. So we saw games, we kind of modeled it out and thought, all right, we think that there's something here. And
and then this
like I said,
particular license, only so Care Bears
oh,
specifically.
yeah,
How did you
yeah.
arrive at that license, and what it was it kind of like the chicken before the egg? Was it the game designed and then you guys layered on, decide let's layer on Care Bears as an IP, or did you say, hey, we can get this IP, let's go now create a game that fits it? How did that play out?
So we were already doing those first few games.
Okay.
And we have some funding from some investors in Zoop, and they have some other companies that they're also invested in. One of those other companies is called Naftos, and Naftos is actually the licensee of record for this game. They have a broad license with Cloudco, who's the parent company for Care Bears. So when our shared investor was kind of explaining what it was that Naftos did and what sort of properties they had available in what categories, we were like, well, maybe we could make something work here because they had the license already and they were kind of doing other things with it. They were working on other products. I won't get into,
Sure.
specifically, but it wasn't games, although the license kind of covered this card game. So it was like, well, what if we, you know, created the game, you have the license, we create the game, we partner on this thing. And that's kind of how this one happened. It's not like we were like, you know what, Care Bears, don't get me wrong, I love Care Bears. I was a fan as a kid. I grew up on it. And
Sure.
my designer and his wife, like are they never stopped. Like they were fans as kids and they're like adults, with plushies and collectibles and they understand the lore of Care Bears, like so it made it really easy to tap into, like the storylines and the characters and the worlds of Care Bears because they knew it without having to do the research.
Yeah.
So like for all those reasons, it made a lot of sense for us to say like the license is available. We know how to put together a game. Basically, let let's do it. Like why would we not do this? So it took a while, like whenever you work in licensed properties, it takes longer than you want, longer than you
Yeah.
think, with approvals and back and forths and everything like that. But yeah, I mean, like, we finally got there. So this is sort of like a big name IP for us. And,
It's
and
huge.
because of this, we're in conversations with other IPs, directly, ourselves to be the licensee, as opposed to going through a partner, for some other licenses, in the future.
It's interesting. Once you can do one, then other licensee companies say, okay, these guys clearly can manage a license, and let's give them a shot. right?
It's interesting because there's still like a strange stigma from some of these companies regarding crowdfunding.
Mm,
They still think of it as like 10, 15 years ago where you're coming, hat in hand at begging people, for money. Like when people are like, well, why does Care Bears need to do a crowdfunding campaign? Of course, you get those comments like all over the place as well. It's like, you don't understand how licensing works. This is not, Care Bears doing this. This is, someone thought like, hey, we think that there's an
yeah.
opportunity here to utilize Care Bears in this way. It's actually us, running the crowdfunding campaign, not Cloudco, the parent company. So it's interesting to fight against that stigma. Cloudco was on board. That's not they had no issue with the crowdfunding, but there are some other, IPs and IP holders out there that it's very difficult to convince them that like this is kind of the way that it works now, specifically in the gaming industry. Like, if you want to get into retail, you kind of need to show success and proof of concept on crowdfunding so that to get a distribution deal, you need to de-risk for the distributor who's going to maybe place a large order. And you have to show them, hey, people want this product. There's going to be more people, and you probably know this as well, that Venn diagram of the people who back campaigns on Kickstarter and who, go into a retail shop barely overlap at all. So
Yeah.
it's you're not cannibalizing your own market. You're basically just showing proof of concept and de-risking a risky proposition for distributors to pick up your project and get it into stores.
So it's interesting talking about that Venn diagram. So if you look at, so I'll throw another Venn diagram at you. So you got the Kickstarter, right? You've
Yeah.
got people who play board games. So those two things need to intersect. Now you got a third circle you're drawing of people who know the Care Bears IP and
Yes.
have some kind of emotional connection to it, right? So it's where those three things connect, that bullseye. So how did you guys kind of map out how to approach or how to target that market, right? Because you're targeting people in their 40s and 50s, really, I guess, in terms of if you want to hook
Yes.
into the nostalgia, with the hope that they're going to give it, to someone at a younger generation that they can try to bring other people into the IP.
That is correct. I mean, we are targeting the parents. Even though
Yeah.
this is a game that kids can play, we are targeting the 40, 50-year-olds, who are gamers and who grew up on Care Bears that have that nostalgia for it. Um, and going back, it's those tools, those marketing tools, right? And figuring out how to target Care Bears fans, figuring out how to target gamers, um, all the meta ads that you run, the Facebook groups, Reddit. It's really a shame what's happened to Twitter because Twitter used to be an incredible marketing tool, and now, like realistically, I don't know that anything really breaks through the sort of like doom scroll, you know, politics on Twitter. Like I don't see anything anymore really except for that. And maybe that's just my feed, but it
From some of the stats I've seen from some of the marketing companies that focus specifically on Kickstarter, the numbers are really high in terms of what actually converts, and it being something like 89% of your audience is going to come from meta
yeah.
ads, right? So people that go and do banner ads and do Google ads and things like that. Like I know a lot of them are still trying to do Google ads, so they rank, but it's still almost predominantly meta. Where, I mean, why put your budget dollars into other platforms if it's not going to deliver for it, if it's not going to convert, right? So,
Yeah,
um,
we're really not. But like I said, the launch boom thing
yeah,
is interesting to me because that really sort of like walks you through exactly what you need to do to target the people that you're really looking to target. Parents, like educational games or fans of cartoons and 80s type of stuff. Like that, you have all those categories that you could sort of target. And then, for people listening to this that kind of like wonder, taking a little bit deeper dive, you're converting all those people, you know, instead of sending them to the Kickstarter page to sign up for when the Kickstarter launches, we're sending them to our own landing page, and then we're collecting their email addresses. We tell all of the clients that we work with over on Zoop, email is king.
yeah,
For all the reasons that we kind of just described, where the algorithm changes and social media platforms are, look, the ROAS used to be, 4 or 5x a few years ago. Now it's like really tough to break like a 3.35,
yeah.
ROAS. So things change, but the one thing that is sort of the constant is emails. So if you're able to collect hundreds or thousands of emails even before your campaign launches, that's that's to me, that's your biggest tool, James. I don't know if you agree,
Oh,
but that's
100% I agree. Yeah, it's
yeah,
someone best kind of articulated to me, gosh, a number of years ago now. It might have been Chandler or Copenhagen. I can't remember who was saying, but they said, because I kept trying to send people to the Kickstarter pre-launch page to get the notify me signups. And
yeah,
he said that's good because that's important. You need that number up high. However, Kickstarter is going to hit those people 48 hours before you launch,
yeah,
and then they're going to hit you again. They're going to hit them again 48 hours before the campaign's done, and then that you have no access to that contact.
correct. Yeah,
If you have an email, you can keep hitting them until they get sick of you and unsubscribe, right? So the value of that contact, although it might cost you $4 to get that,
sure,
that lead is now in your database that you might have other games down the road you're launching where now that lead costs you nothing because you've already paid for it, right? So you have to be
correct.
respectful, obviously, of people's emails because what really kills me as a creator and as a publisher is when I do an e-blast and you always have a certain number of people that unsubscribe, no
For
matter what.
sure.
Every
Yes.
single time I do an e-blast, I think, okay, my list is clean. Everyone is in for the ride, and you still have a handful of unsubscribes, and it just kills me because it's like, wow, I just lost $50 there because that was $50
Sure.
worth of leads I had to pay to get, right? So yeah, it's if anybody's listening that is trying to gather anything from this discussion leads are key. Get that email list up as high as you can,
Yeah.
and it will serve you going forward from campaign to campaign. Because each campaign you do, then you've got that list of emails you
Correct.
can dump in as well, right?
Yeah, you just keep building on top and on top and on top.
Yeah,
Like I said, we use Launch Boom. I I
Lunchroom's great.
know,
Yeah,
yeah, I like them. It was expensive the first time, but now as a repeat customer, it's much more affordable.
yeah,
So for anybody who's thinking about that, I know BackerKit also does sort of that pre-launch email thing.
yep.
I have no experience with it, so I can't endorse either way. I just know that it's a thing that is also out there for people.
Yeah, so there's different ones. So we've had them all on the podcast as well as CEO of Launch Boom. So Launch Boom is there's a trend last year we saw is pretty much every massive campaign that was launched had Launch Boom as its kind of starting engine, and so they have an upfront fee that you pay, right? It's like
Yeah,
a consulting fee, but they don't take a percentage of your campaign.
correct.
If you go to like a backer kit, for instance, there's no upfront fee, but you're paying a percentage of everything they bring in. Right. So
Okay.
every sale you get through your campaign that they help bring, they're getting a piece of that. So it all depends on the model you want to structure and based on kind of how you're monetized going in.
Yeah.
Different solutions for different situations, right? But they're all good. I've used them all.
Oh, cool. All
There's
right.
other ones as well that you can. Gel Up does pre-launch ads as well.
Huh.
So and I know
All right.
they're
Yeah.
actually a partner of
Kickstarter. Yeah.
yeah, like a Kickstarter kind of affiliate or whatever is LinkedIn. So a lot of them out there. The key is you have to advertise before your
Yes.
campaign. You have to
Yes.
build your list up ahead of time. It's a crowd funder, not a crowd finder. You need to bring the crowd, right?
And I think that that's a common misconception
Yeah.
for people, because like I said, we work with clients all the time, and we have some campaigns that are live on Zoop right now, and you can see the ones where they built their audience ahead of time, and the ones who we told them to build their audience ahead of time, and maybe didn't, do that, for lack of a better way to put it.
I've had this on this podcast. I've had guests, people who said, "Hey, I'd love to come on and do an episode." And I always say, "Well, just send me a link to so I can see your campaign page, right?" Like we've got a lot of people, and we'll try to get as many as we can on here. And there's been some will look and they'll have like 80 signups or 100 signups, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I gotta be honest with you, you're not gonna cross the finish line. Like I'm looking at what you're asking for. The math is the math. And
Yeah.
if the math is saying that you're not even going to come close to funding, you're going to go through 30 days of excruciating pain
Yeah.
just to still have to either fail or pull the campaign. So, let's maybe push this off until you're ready, and then we'll get you
Yeah.
on the podcast, right? So
And it is excruciating, man.
it
Like
is. We've all been
the,
there, right?
yeah, we're in like the mid-campaign slump, and you just
Yeah.
wake up and you're like, please, just a little bit more. Please, sir, just a little bit more. Um, but in our experience, it kicks up again, in the back half, and of course that last week and those last few days. So I feel we're in a good spot right now, and I
Yeah.
think that we're gonna have, like an overall, like a really nice, successful campaign for this.
Well, that's a great segue because I'm looking at your campaign so far. I'm gonna put it in Canadian dollars. That's the only way I can see it. But
Oh, okay.
you're at $72,000 on a $13,000 goal. So that's very well done for still 18 days to go. So there's always that back end hockey stick. It's a reversed bell curve.
Yeah.
So you'll obviously have some more funding coming in your last 72 hours. But looking at your page, can you give us kind of an overview of what this game is about? The gist of how people play it. I get the sense that this is kind of like a collectible element to this as well, right? There's some rarity cards and things. So just kind of take us through that if you don't mind.
Yeah, so starting sort of from the top, this is ultimately a deck building game. But because this is Care Bears, we have a lot of different masters to serve. And what I mean by that is you have your gamers, but then you also have people who are just collectors of Care Bears.
Yeah.
So this is a deck building game. The deck building game itself is fully contained. However, we do have a TCG element to this. So there are booster packs and chase packs, and that's, for those people who want to collect, that want as much Care Bears stuff as possible. This is in fact the first ever deck building game for Care Bears. Yes, there have been other games, other board games, other card games, but in terms of deck builders, this is the very first one. The deck builder works very much like Star Realms or Legendary.
Mm.
Mechanics wise, we have our own formula and sort of storylines that we're working through. You have four main Care Bears: Cheer Bear, Share Bear, Good Luck Bear, and Funshine Bear. We do have four expansion packs. These are character expansion packs. So if you wanted to play as Grumpy Bear or Tenderheart Bear, Wish Bear, or Bedtime Bear, those are also available as all four together bundled in a reward, or you could choose each of them individually as add-ons. For those gamers who like every mechanical card, you don't necessarily need the booster packs with the alt art and the holofoils and things like that. Those character expansion packs are different mechanical cards than what are in the core game.
Mm.
So if you're looking for every mechanical card, go for the core game with those expansion packs. If you're new to gaming or you're just a Care Bears person, you're like, hey, I'll try a game for the first time. The core game is fully contained. You don't need the expansions to enjoy it. We have a fully contained, nice family game for you and your family and your kids. I like to say that it is strategic. You do need to use critical thinking. I don't think that like 5 and 6 year olds can just open this up and play it on their own. They would need an adult to kind of walk them through the first time or two. But then I think it's easy enough to sort of see the patterns and everything. But with other, with deck building games, look, it comes down to math, strategy, figuring out, do I use essentially, we're using draft and attack energy, right? Those are like the standard types of things. They're called wish and care energy for Care Bears though, because we're not fighting villains and having to beat people up. We're overcoming obstacles and helping other people. We're rescuing characters called the Whiffles. We're having to overcome the bad guy Bluster and his bad crowd. So it's very similar to what you might be used to in other deck building games, but it's really more geared towards this universe of Care Bears. Specifically, I will say unlock the magic. This is a different generation of Care Bears than maybe, some people when they think of Care Bears, they think of the like the OG 80s Care
Yeah.
Bears. So this is not that. Licenses, you kind of can't cross the streams, right? There's confusion in the marketplace if you start crossing over, you know, um, the good old, oh man, like the original. Why can't I think of? I'm blanking on the word.
So
I'll
just
find.
let me jump in there on that. So on so
Yeah.
when so are you saying that you've got Care Bears as an IP, but the characters have to be slightly different than the ones that were in like the '80s cartoon show?
So yeah, there's different generations of Care Bears,
Okay.
right? So this generation is called Unlock the Magic. That's where we got the name. It was 2019
Yep.
with a Netflix show, and it's on YouTube. And so this is like a more updated, cleaner looking animated style for the Care
Like the
Bears.
illustration style. I understand.
Yes,
So you could have
very much so.
Sunshine Bear, but
Fun
this
time. Yep.
but Sunshine Bear has to look in the aesthetic of this new Unlock the Magic illustration style versus what was done in the '80s. Because if you use that, then you have to go back and pay those people who are the illustrators of that particular one. Is that fair?
That's between, I guess, the owners of the license and the
But just in
creators.
general, that's kind of where you're going with this, right? So the IP has to have its own kind of,
It all has to fit
yeah,
cohesively,
got
right?
it.
So if you start having different generations of the same characters, you know, IP owners don't like that. You
Yeah,
could kind of like choose one or the other.
yeah,
So,
I get that.
uh, so we went with this one first, and people have been asking for like, oh, the classic. That's the word I was looking for, the classic Care Bears.
Yeah.
Are they going to make an appearance? And the thing I could say is, well, if we're successful enough on this one that, things go well with the campaign, potentially retail, and there's money to be made, you know, th there's no telling, what could come next.
Yeah.
So,
So what
for
is
those
next for you guys? Like, what's the next step? Like, what's coming after this?
Yeah, so this is a whole new model for us. Like I said, we've done two games before Care Bears. We
Yeah.
have another game planned to launch in October as well, also from a comic slash manga property.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
we haven't really announced it, so this will be, I guess, the first announcement of this game. But it's called Common America, Kamen America, and uh, Tim and the team over at Common America that they've put out maybe 12 or 14 different Kickstarter campaigns. They do six figures every time out the gate, over 1,000 backers every time out the gate. So I think that there's a nice large audience that's looking for more, Common America. There's never been a card game for them, so this will be the first for them. Um, and then we potentially revisit some of the older licenses. We're working on some new licenses, but you're going to continually see more and more games from us over on Kickstarter, the comics and graphic novels over on Zoop. So that's kind of the foreseeable future for us, James.
Super cool. Well, Jordan, this looks super awesome. And again, it brought back the feels, man. I was so happy to get you on this podcast. I want to wish you all the best on this campaign. I know you guys are going to be really pleased with where it ends up. It's already running strong, but as you know, with 18 days to go, there's a lot more funds that are going to be dumped into that pledge account there. So all the best, my friend. And when you're ready for the next IP, let's get you back, all right?
Appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for having us on. And if I may, if anyone wants to get in touch, hello@wearezoop.com. We're at wearezoop on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. The Care Bears unlock the Magic Deck building game on Kickstarter. So thank you so much.
Awesome, brother. Take care. Cheers.
Appreciate it, James. Thanks, man.
This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply subscribe to our YouTube channel, Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.